Today we have Clay Gleason, the superintendent of MSAD6. Thank you, Clay, for coming in today. You are going on your third year as a superintendent.
Correct.
Yep. How does the 24-25 season ahead look to you? What are the challenges you're facing?
Yep. I think that it's looking good. We're definitely in a better place in a couple of areas. Staffing, I know going back two years, 1 year ago, we were struggling quite a bit more than we are now. I feel pretty good about being able to attract good candidates for a lot of our open positions, and I think in most areas we're in pretty good shape for staffing. We have a journey we've kind of embarked on with our facilities. We had a pretty significant process we went through last year of reviewing and analyzing and collecting data and trying to reach out to the community to look at what things we might do to improve our facilities, because all of our schools are getting older. So we are in the middle of applying for school construction projects for all of our schools except Buxton, of course, which is the newest school. So those are a couple of things that come to mind.
Which school in particular needs attention?
I think there's a couple. I think that the Standish schools are problematic because we have these three schools. They're all getting older, of varying degrees of age, and it's hard to maintain three buildings and three roofs. And I recently had a conversation with the rec departments in Standish about how to service the rec program, and they have unique problems having kids coming from three different schools compared to like Buxton, that the kids are all at one school. So even for services like that, it's a challenge. And the Georgia Jack building, I think it was built in the 50s. It's been there a long time, multiple renovations. The space is just not adequate. And then even our high school, at face value, you walk in and you look around, it doesn't look too bad, but if you spend any time in that building, there are a lot of limitations. We have a weight room that's basically a closet, and we have sports teams that are competitive with teams across the state in cross country and football, and our weight room just doesn't match the quality of the athletes that we have in it. Our stage, our performing arts venue is just old and does not. If you go to Wyndham or any surrounding school that's in any renovation, they have much better facilities for their students, and it just doesn't feel right that we can't offer the same thing for our students.
All of that is valid, but how do you explain to cash-strapped citizens that this is vital and necessary and needed, and then you have budget increases which don't often go over well with folks?
Absolutely, and there's layers to that conversation. But one thing that I feel pretty strongly about is we would not ever be able to support. I wouldn't want to ask for the support of the community to locally fund any significant project. This is why we're pursuing this idea of state participation in a major construction project or a series of construction projects. Because if you look at deferred maintenance costs and the costs just to get our code issues addressed or ADA accessibility issues addressed, if we had unlimited funds and could just do it tomorrow, we would be looking at a number north of $30 million to improve all of our buildings, right? All of them, get them up to code, get them all ADA accessible and improve them. $30 million, that's a big number. But that also is approximately the share that we might pay of a state funded project that could replace all of our schools potentially. So it's a lot of money, it's a big number, but we could get something for everyone potentially for the same price tag as just fixing all of our old things. If that makes sense.
Is there federal assistance for those kinds of initiatives?
As far as I know, it's through the state, and if it comes through the feds, it gets passed through the state. I have to say, I don't know exactly the detail level on how they fund and where the money comes from. I just know the state sets aside a certain amount of money each year. They have a process. They haven't opened the school construction list for I think it's been maybe 10 years, and they were able to fund, I think, 8 projects over the last 8 to 10 years. So it's basically one project a year. So if you don't finish in the top 10, you typically don't get the financial support.
Take us back in time a little bit and bring us to where you are now as far as your professional career goes.
Yep. So I went to the University of Maine at Farmington for my undergraduate degree. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but that was an institution known for education, and I had a tuition scholarship. So I went there and found my way into teaching. And then from there, I spent 7 years as a science teacher, a middle school science teacher at Elm Street School in Mechanic Falls. And that was a great experience for me. And then in 2002, at 29 years old, I decided to try my my hand in the world, and I had begun working on my administrative degree, largely because of my experiences both with good principals and not so good principals. And my dad was actually a school administrator, and I think was a good role model for me of how to do it right, how to have relationships with people and with your staff and with the community. So I thought that's something I could do, you know. So I got hired at Bun Eagle Middle School that summer, and didn't think I'd stay there, but I ended up staying for 10 years, and then ended up at Hollis Elementary for 10 years. And in between, I got my master's degree from the University of Southern Maine. And then when the superintendent's position opened up here, I felt I had a good handle on the work that had been going on in this district. Part of why I had stayed up to that point is I believed in the work we're doing. This district is a really student-centered district. And I don't think that people realize that are on the outside, that there are some things that make our district special. So I really felt like it was, you know, I could take a turn at the wheel of leading the district. And it was a big jump year one, but here we are starting year three, and things are starting to sort of settle in and level out a little bit, I think.
I want to describe the district since you brought it up,
Yeah.
and how it's changed since you first entered the district.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty large district, both geographically and in terms of population. There isn't a ton of diversity in a lot of the traditional sense, but there's a lot of socioeconomic diversity, I think. We do have kids from different, and families from different walks of life. We are becoming a little more diverse, not as much as the urban centers like Portland and Lewiston, but we do have, folks finding housing out this way because it's just become more, it's more of an option than it is in the cities. But we have 3,300 students as of this year. We have about 750 employees. Our buses drive 800,000 miles a year, transporting students. We definitely have the largest bus fleet in the state that's run by a school system. And you know how it's changed. When I started back in 2002, Bun Eagle Middle School was the largest middle school in the state, and we had over 1,100 kids in the middle school. And now we're down to about 750, and it wasn't a sudden drop. It was a slow and steady decline over the years. The high school had 1,400 kids when I started, and now we're around 1,100. Still large. I think we're the fourth largest school district in the state. But definitely we have seen a downward sort of trend in our population. But our enrollment studies show that's leveling off, and that's kind of what we've seen, that we're leveling in about 250 students per class, right? So the freshman class, senior class, or all the first graders in the district are about 250, whereas it wasn't unusual 10 or 15 years ago to have more like 300 students in a grade.
Do you see an increase in homeschooling?
Somewhat, but I hadn't looked at this. We saw a spike around COVID with the restrictions, and for different reasons, whether people didn't agree with the restrictions or they just wanted to keep their kids home and they're feeling safe. We saw that increase for a year or two, but it kind of leveled back down. I believe the last time I checked, it was somewhere around 40 students who could attend with us but choose to homeschool.
COVID hasn't left us. What is the policy going into this school year?
Yeah, I think the difference is that it's become, for right or wrong, it's become more normalized as another illness that we deal with. I remember a few years ago, this was, prior to the COVID outbreak of 2020, we had an influenza problem at Edna Libby one year, and we had to send kids home and isolate them because we had like 25% of the school all had the flu. And that was a pretty serious thing. The flu can be serious too, right? So I think we have approached it as we do other serious illnesses, and base our response on symptoms and individuals instead of group responses. And I think that has worked. I think that we found our way, because the disruption that whole experience caused, it's undeniable that it is. People did what they had to do to try to keep the world safe with so many unknowns, but there was definitely an impact on our students as a result of that. So we really don't want to see a repeat of that if we can help it.
Did you see a drop-off in performance in students after COVID?
Yes, there are a couple of grade levels that were the most impacted, and the data that we are tracking shows that they are struggling to catch up. They're leveling off, they're closing the gap, but they're still running behind. I don't remember exactly which years they are, so I don't want to say it wrong, but there's a couple of cohorts that I think it's the kids who are in kindergarten, first, second grade. Those primary grades are the ones that have struggled to recoup their losses. So we continue to try to work away at that. What we have seen is the kids that have started since have not had those same ill effects as far as their academic performance. They're the kids who started in kindergarten in the last couple of years, and then the older kids have closed that gap down more than those. There's like a 3-year span there where they were more deeply impacted.
Is summer school still something that takes place?
Yeah, summer school, in my years in the district, we've tried different things. Our standard summer school offerings are extended school year services for students who have IEPs and who are deemed to perhaps have regression if they don't get summer services. We do a kindergarten jumpstart and boost, which is kids either entering kindergarten or leaving kindergarten or first grade. So those are students identified to be needing a little bit extra to get their skills where they need to be. And those are the populations we focused on. We have pockets of supports at the upper grades. We've tried to do more extensive summer programming, but parents are faced with this decision of, changing their child care to get their child to summer school because we can't do an 8 to 5 summer school program, or putting them into rec or putting them into daycare or having just fun in the summer. And we found that our participation in larger summer programs just isn't there to support the cost. So we've tried it. It hasn't always been that successful. But if there are students who have needs, usually a parent can work with the principal and we can find some solution for a family who really wants supports in the summer.
As far as education goes, it's changed markedly, of course, since you were in school and I was. I'm curious about the policies around AI and Chat GPT.
Yep.
How does that work? To me, back in the day, it would have been called cheating.
Yeah. Yep. It's a really hot topic. And the approach we're taking is to kind of just sit back a little bit and watch where it evolves, because it changes so quickly. You could write policies and then they could be obsolete within a few months. The approach we're taking basically is that guiding the adults, because for students, there is no authorized use that we should be allowing, because there are no approved AI programs for under 18 that we would offer, that kids would have access to in school. So anything they would be doing would be outside of the bounds of school. So our guidance is more for our staff, and we have handbook additions to guide some of that early on, but it's really minimal sanctioned use right now, just because there's so much we don't understand. And I think the challenge we're going to have is our students, especially high school students, are going to be out ahead of us as they typically are, and how do we keep pace with that?
What about teacher burnout? I read about that a lot. Is that an issue that is found into you and the board?
Yes. What I see is younger professionals who've come into the career and it maybe isn't quite what they thought it would be, are looking at other options of what they might do for their careers before they get so entrenched or advanced that they feel like they don't have a lot of other options. So we've had a little bit of that. I don't think it's been as bad here as the national media might make it out to be. Like in other places, I think it's definitely worse. But it's definitely a concern. And I think one thing the board and the Bonnie Eagle School District is trying to do about that is to give people reasons to work here. If you can make the conditions and the work environment more welcoming and more hospitable to your employees, and then fair pay doesn't help. I mean, it doesn't hurt. That's some things I think that we can try to do to make this a better place to be and keep the people we have.
No matter who you are as an employer these days, wages is definitely first and foremost an issue with people. And there's a push for equity and higher pay all the way around.
Yes. And I think, if anybody listened to me during our last budget cycle, we prioritized wage increases by not increasing other items that we could control in the budget, so that we could pay our people, basically, because we were pretty woefully behind a lot of our surrounding communities. And we did have people leaving all positions. It didn't teachers, bus drivers. Bus drivers we had stabilized a little earlier than other positions, but ed techs, pretty much any position we were behind. So the board made a commitment through their negotiations last year with 3 of our largest bargaining units to increase that, to correct that. Now, we're not the highest paying district. We never will be, nor should we be, but we are definitely more competitive. And what I've found is that if you give people reasons to stay, they don't need the most money. They just need to feel valued. And I think that's kind of where we are right now, is we're paying a fair wage that's competitive and it gives people a reason to stay here if they like the environment here.
I'm curious about the use of phones in the classroom. I have a teacher that works at Gordon Academy, and she said it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
And if she can't get the phone, she'll have a parent on the phone that will sometimes tell her, "No, I want my child to have that phone
Yeah.
accessible."
It's definitely a problem, and it's a societal problem, not just a school problem. I think if you go out to dinner, and I find myself being guilty of this, you go out to dinner and you're on your phone. 10 or 15 years ago, people were out to dinner talking and interacting, and you didn't see phones in people's hands.
We're on the phone right
We're
now.
on a phone right now. Great point. So, I think we have to realize that this is something that didn't get created overnight, and we're not going to solve it overnight. And for some of our younger people, and probably some adults too, it's almost like a screen addiction problem. And you can't just take away the cause of that addiction cold turkey without some ramifications. So we're trying to figure out the best course of action. I think like in our elementary schools, it's pretty clear that if parents decide they want their kids to have phones, and they do, a lot of elementary kids will have phones, they're supposed to be off it in their backpack. And if it becomes a problem, we work with the parent. And for the most part, that has been fine. There's a few isolated issues that we work through, but parents are generally good, and that works out fine. Middle school and high school are harder. I think the middle school has a rule where the students are supposed to have them off and in their locker or their backpack during the day. And occasionally there are confrontations over that. But for the most part, people have been supportive. The high school is definitely a harder creature to get our hands around. There has been discussion about what to do. Some schools have gone to those pouches, those magnetic pouches, to lock the phones up during the day. But personally, I struggle with that. There would be a huge expense associated with that. And for the most part, it's something we're trying to manage the best we can without creating more problems than we're solving.
As you head into the 24-25 season, it's kind of like setting sail as the school year begins. You don't know what kind of rough seas you're going to encounter.
Yeah.
What do you foresee as some of the challenges ahead?
Yeah, I think that I mentioned at the beginning, the facilities questions that we have. And, for the community, we had received some input. We had 700 people reply to a thought exchange we did. We've had a handful of people come to some community forums. So we have definitely not heard from all constituents about proposals for what to do with our facilities, but we had to put some kind of plan together to have a proposal, if you will. So there's a lot of ground to cover. The first step is get our applications into the state. They go through their process, see where we fall on their rankings. If we are lucky enough to finish high enough, then the work begins of engaging the community again to see what is the real solution or outcome that we would pursue if we had state dollars available to us. So that would be a good problem to have, but that'll be a lot of work. I think another issue is our strategic plan. We had a strategic plan for our district that was developed on the heels of COVID, when people were kind of home and under limited lockdowns and things. So we're trying to engage people in the community. There'll be forums this fall where we'll invite input. We'll send out more surveys to see what does the community want our focus to be in the next 5 to 8 years. So that'll be a pretty significant effort that we'll be undertaking this year as well.
I think you've been a steady hand and you've done a fine job. And I thank you for coming in and giving us some of your time today.
Thank you. And I just like people to know that I'm there. I'm accessible. A lot of people have my cell phone, my email, and I'm happy to chat anytime that folks have concerns or things that they want to talk about. So thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Not a problem at all. You're a true believer in education, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.